We've all heard and maybe even know firsthand that people don't leave companies, they leave bosses. While you're being the best leader you can be and not intentionally driving your team away, how do you know if you're that boss? Whether you're afraid that you're that boss or you want to prevent becoming that boss, stay tuned for some insights and entertainment. Welcome back to another episode of Leading Beyond the Spreadsheet, the leadership podcast for analytically minded leaders who want to balance their technical expertise into embracing and excelling with the people part of work. I'm your host, Kris Liebau, owner of Action and Ease Coaching. Today, I'm excited to welcome Joel Hilchey. Joel, welcome to Leading Beyond the Spreadsheet.
Thanks for having me.
So before we dive into the That Boss conversation, let me give you some quick info on Joel. He studied engineering physics. He has a master's in environmental engineering, less math, more people-y, his words. So he's in the right place with us. But he wanted to solve problems that helped people. And so he combined his love of entertainment and education to study creativity, collaboration, and culture. He's also a keynote speaker, which is incidentally where he and I met. He's also an author. His first book, Brain Sprouting, is on creativity and flow. Fantastic read. But today, I really want to dive into his new book that's called The 6.5 Habits of Highly Defective Bosses, Serious Lessons for Accidental Managers. So that's a bit of a mouthful. So I'm curious, Joel, what inspired a book about highly defective bosses?
Oh, well, the short answer is because I probably was one, or at least I was an accidental manager. Maybe that's the for sure thing. You know, I have a training company, and a number of years ago hired an assistant. Started off part time. You know, my wife and I were just like overwhelmed. We'd had a kid. We're busy, and I hired an assistant. Things went fine, and I had this assistant for kind of 2 years, and then she moved on, and I hired a full-time person, and then she was going on mat leave, and then I hired 2 more people. But so we're like growing, and we had a half dozen contractors at this point. But I didn't really feel like a boss, I guess. In fact, I had this moment of realization where my assistant came to me and she said, "Joel, somebody else on our team said some pretty inappropriate stuff." And, I didn't really have a good response to that. I was like, "Oh, that's bad." She said, "Like, do we have any policy for this sort of thing?" No. "Do we have a code of conduct?" No. Should we do something? Yeah, probably. Like, I'm just stumbling my way through this thing, and thankfully she wasn't mad at me, so that I was able to kind of stay with it and not get too offended. But the moment happened in my kind of debriefing with my wife the next day. I'm talking about this conversation, and I realized that my employee came to me not as my assistant, but because I was her employer. Like I was the boss, right? And so it's sort of embarrassing to say this. Like, I was accidentally a boss. Like, I hired somebody on purpose. But I didn't feel like the boss. So it's sort of embarrassing. You know, I'm 3 years into having a team, realizing for the first time that, like, I'm responsible for this person's career and our team culture and, like all these things. So I didn't have some sort of, I guess, guide that was saying like, "Hey, don't be like this as a boss." I just was sort of making it up as I went along. And as I talked with people in other companies who are also managers, they said, "Oh yeah, that's how I became a boss too." My senior person left on the team, and somebody said, "Well, maybe you should do that role. Then why don't you lead the team?" Or one friend was like a great technical salesperson, and so they're like, "Well, maybe you should manage the technical sales team." And he was just like totally overwhelmed by this and was terrible at managing all the people. And he like wanted his old job back. I think so. The stats are that like around 80% of people kind of identify as like accidental bosses. And, they didn't go to school for it. They weren't gunning for a position of leadership. They just sort of found themselves in that role. And so I had written an article series about this, about kind of the annoying things that bosses do. And along the way, I started sharing these ideas, and people said, "Oh, that's really good. Tell me more about that." And eventually, those ideas became a book, The 6.5 Habits of Highly Defective Bosses. Serious lessons for accidental managers, because I wanted to share these kind of like tools to be less terrible, basically. Like I didn't need to win the Boss of the Year award. I just wanted my assistant to not quit. So
Yeah.
so it's not like I had a super high bar, but it turns out that our team has developed a really amazing culture now. And some of these things that I thought were relatively simple, that some of them I stumbled into, some of them I picked up from other people or read about. Some of them are really powerful, and they tend to take care of the big stuff that really annoys people. So that's where the book came from.
How do you feel your leadership has changed with all this thought that you've put into this?
Honestly, I feel like the simple answer is that I just pay more attention to the people on the team. And I think so. Habit 1 is function forgetting. And it's because a lot of new bosses forget certain roles. The role of a boss is different than the role of just like a producer, obviously. And the way I kind of define it, I make like a 2x2 matrix for people. We could even, for the people watching the video, we've got, like task focused, and we've got people focused, and we've got short term down here and long term. So it's a nice 2x2 matrix. And the short term task focused stuff, that's like project management, that's getting stuff done. That's where most bosses are most comfortable, because that's where they were as an employee. The longer term project focus or longer term task focused things are things like strategy. Are we doing the right stuff? The short term people focused things are the team dynamics element. Like, are people getting along? Are people working well together? Nobody really told me when I started that was part of the job. I mean, not that there was anybody around to tell me. I guess like I was the guy. But when people have issues on the team, they come to you if you're the boss, and you all of a sudden have to deal with those things. The long-term people related stuff I think of as almost like career development. So these are the conversations about where are people going. It's probably going to transcend your immediate team, but they're looking to you for, are they learning the skills they want? Are they having the growth opportunities that they want? And the short version here is people usually forget about the people. Certainly I did. I mean, I didn't ever think about my first assistant. Gosh, she was only part-time, but I never really said, so do you want to keep doing this forever part-time? Or are you thinking of moving on at some point? Mm-hmm. And as a result, I was kind of blindsided when she moved on and said, yeah, I'm going to take a full-time thing here. Because I just didn't ask. I didn't pay attention to it. And I guess I kept my head in the sand. So the task-focused things are usually more comfortable for people, probably especially for technical leaders, the technical folks that you work with and that I work with as well in the engineering world. It's the people side that needs more attention. That's the short answer. So I feel like I try to pay more attention to that. Is it more comfortable now? I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. So I would say before you erase it, before you erase it, stop. Right. So that's a big part of things, that concepts that I share with clients too, is there's the facts and data, and then there's emotion and motivation.
Yes. Yes.
And you have to have both. You have to communicate on both, because especially in that short-term task oriented, people can go anywhere and get a to-do list.
Totally.
So
and they usually want less boss involvement on that side. They're like, just get out of the way, let me do my work.
Yeah.
They'll say, now that doesn't mean they're doing the right work or that it's well coordinated. Bosses play that kind of coordination role. And the strategy question is like, are we doing the right work? Are we working on the right things that actually achieve our goals? So there is some coordination and kind of bigger picture role on the task focus side, but the people side is so easy to forget.
Well, and with this too, right now, with the political, social environment that we're in, with that image, with the time scale, that
Mm,
strategic part, right? The farther we look out, the less certainty there is. And
yes,
so there's that whole like, what's your risk tolerance? What's your threshold for uncertainty? And
yes,
there's a lot of people, even that are very good at planning, that are really stressed out right now because of the amount of uncertainty that's happening.
totally, totally. I mean, this is just what it's like to be a human right now. But um, one of the one of the things we talk about that you had mentioned before was like risk aversion, and this is a real
Yes.
trap, especially for technical managers. It comes up in the context of my book as part of Habit Two, mediocrity mongering, which is basically fostering a culture of mediocrity. And where risk aversion comes into play is that uh, innovation is inherently uncertain. New ideas take us away from the tried and tested, um, I guess, stable foundation and processes. And the higher up people move in an organization, often, the more it seems is at stake for bad decisions. And so it's easy to become more risk averse as you become a bigger manager. Now, not all top level management have this risk aversion, but lots of people do. And the way it shows up as a boss is that when you're super risk averse, it means you probably like cut down or shoot down um, weird or out of the box ideas. And this is really annoying for your highest performing employees because your top performers, your superstars, they want to fly, right? Their idea of a good time is like, just let me contribute something here. I want to do great work. I will deliver everything for you, and I don't want to be held back by bureaucracy and standards and policies. And it's not that it's not that policies and standards aren't useful. Of course they are, but if you are so risk averse that any sort of deviation or new experiment feels like a test where somebody's failing hard, if a little thing goes wrong, your top performers are not going to like this. They're going to want to leave. So we could just talk about this, but I think one of the manager's roles is to make sure that team is delivering awesome results. Make sure your team is doing great stuff. And most teams have superstars on them. Yeah, it's not that the mediocre many are terrible. It's just like some people are in the right role for them. They've found they're A players,
Yep.
and and you need to keep your superstars. And holding these people back by being too risk averse or slowing everybody else down or slowing everybody down so that nobody feels bad. This is something that happens too. It's like, oh, somebody told me a story. They said, my boss actually said to me, slow down. You're making the rest of us look bad. Like, and this person was like, I don't want to work for this schmuck anymore. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I want to contribute here. And she basically said, like, I thought that was just a thing that people pretended to say as a joke when they were like pretending to be insecure. Like the boss actually said it. And probably they're trying to spare everybody else's feelings on the team. Now, it's not that we don't care about other people's feelings, but we want to honor our superstars and honor everyone's unique contributions in the way that they're superstars so that everyone feels like, yeah, I've got an important role to play here. And everyone feels like they can kind of uh, go with their maximum potential speed or something like that.
Yeah. I think The stories that you've shared are a really great example. I talk a lot about the difference between intent and impact.
Sure.
So
Yes.
in that situation where you have somebody who's risk adverse, right?
Yes.
They're like, "Hey, let's play it safe. Let's stick to the tried and true. Like, I don't know what's going to happen." And
Right.
so there's good intent. It comes from there may be some fear in there, but it also comes from a good place
Yes.
too.
Yes.
And they may not understand the impact that has on the team. And I think that's, if somebody's asking, they're like, am I that boss?
Mm.
That's that's the tricky part because
Yeah.
your intentions are good. I work with lots of people who are good people,
Yes.
and they have blind spots, whatever, big surprise.
Totally.
We all have them. Um,
Totally. Yes.
and so
We
it's unpacking some of those blind spots. So
most people
what
don't set out to be bad bosses, right? Like
no
most people, that's why so many stories about bosses are like, she's brilliant, but like or he built a great business, but like good bosses are usually good people, or sorry, bad bosses are usually good people, but they're they've got bad ideas. And this actually is a tricky thing is like, nobody asked me when I became a boss, what's your philosophy of leadership? Like, what's your philosophy of your role as a boss? What's your philosophy of risk and of feedback? Habit 5 is feedback fumbling. Like there are so many ways to be bad at stuff, and uh, and probably we've had these ideas in our mind from a long time ago, and being in a position of leadership really does force you to look inside and say, oh, what do I think about this? What's my philosophy? We do need to provide stability for the team, but also we don't want to be so stable that we're stagnant and we can't try different things, or we can't experiment and make things better or improve.
Yeah, I definitely think, there's a desire for people to be like, okay, this is the perfect sweet spot. I found it and I'm going to
Mm.
stay right here. And it's really that continuum, and taking whatever regularly scheduled intervals to
Yes.
check in, to say, if you've got your pendulum, to say, oh, based on what's going on, which way do we need to make that shift? And
Yes.
then like clearly communicate with everybody that you've made, you have
Yeah.
this idea
Yeah.
that we need
Right.
to collectively make this adjustment, and what's driving that. And so
Totally.
we get so swept away with, and I'm so guilty of this. So my big thing is I come up with an idea, I'm like, oh, I can totally do that, and it's like whew, like just
Oh
blinders
yeah.
on, boom, and it's like, yeah, I can do it. I'm very
Yes.
capable. Should I be doing it? Is it the right thing
Right.
to do? And so being really intentional on, like, are we doing the right things, or am I
Yes.
focusing on my people enough, taking that time to step back from the autopilot and
Yeah.
the firefighting that we get sucked into, to get that
Yes.
40,000, 80,000 foot view of what's going on.
Yeah. This is one of the things we train leaders to do, is to basically make recurring calendar entries for certain types of work. Check in
Well,
with that.
the challenge with that becomes sometimes it's the accountability to do it, because when
Yes.
everybody that's a part of it says, oh no, this other thing's more important.
Totally. Who has time for even a half day or full day strategy retreat? Like, when does that seem like today's priority? It like, oh, we're super busy. We got a lot of things to do.
Yeah.
So you know what? Let's not do those things and just check in to make sure that we should be doing those things. People are like, I'm doing the work. Go away. Stop bothering me. It's like, no, we need to, you know, but then it's on the boss to make sure that strategy retreat is valuable for people. Maybe this is where people like us come in, and we get to facilitate strategy retreats, because sometimes an external voice can make things clearer for people, rather than just the team leader themselves saying, okay, folks, what do we think here? Good leaders need to find a way to pull in other people's perspectives. And I mean, one other tip to do that is just get good at asking questions. Probably listen more than you talk. I'm not doing a very good job of that today, but I feel like when I was asking people about their bad boss stories, often they would have like an instance or two of a bad boss, but a lot of the times they would say, I had some really great bosses too, and I'd say, well, tell me about those people. And they said, I just felt really supported by them. I felt like they actually cared about my perspective. And somebody told me, one of my team members joined in, and we did a little, she happened to join at New Year's, and we had a little like, first day back from the holiday, let's take kind of 2 hours and do a personal goal setting thing. We're a small team. We're, 5 full-time people. And we went through this exercise, and a week or two later, the person who had just started with us said, I just think that was so amazing that you would take the time to like actually ask about our personal goals and actually help us think through how, what mattered to us as people, not just as employees in the context of the company. Like this is just so great. Like, I am so excited to work here. It's like, wow, like that was 2 hours well invested.
Yeah.
Like, it's amazing. It doesn't have to take a lot necessarily if you're doing the right sorts of things.
Well, what I really like about that approach is it's not that, bosses don't think that personal goals are important, but hey, let's take 2 hours, like giving people permission and blocking that time off so that it's not an overcome by events type of a thing, because that's how you show that this is important.
It pays dividends over time, right? Like people say, oh, I don't have time for that. It's not an expense. It's an investment. Like it's a different way of thinking about investing in personal relationships. You want people on your team. I think I want people on my team to be able to come to me and say, I am not where I want to be in life. I need to make a big change here. I want them to include me in that conversation, not just give me their 2 weeks notice. Right. And if somebody says, well, I want to learn this skill, I want to know that so I know what types of work are meaningful to them. Even if it's just, I'm just coming for the paycheck. It's great. Let me tell you the minimum standards we need for you to get this paycheck, because I want to get you your paycheck. I do not want you to get fired here. Here's what you need, Yeah.
Like, it's okay to have an employee that doesn't want to move up in the organization. If they're really happy with what they're doing,
totally.
You don't have to chase them around with a stick to get them
keep
to go
that
do
person.
Else. We've covered a lot of ground, and in the honor of simplicity and like the too long didn't read or too long didn't listen, as folks walk away from this, what's the one thing that you really want them to carry forth into the world?
Sure. Maybe ask yourself how you want to be remembered as a boss. When I was doing my own little reflection at some point, I thought, what do I want my team to feel like? And I happened to write down 3 words. It was like, happy, proud, grateful employees or something. And then I said, okay, that's how I want them to feel. What do I need to do to help them feel that way? If I want them to be grateful and proud of the team that they're on and the company, we're creating, I ended up writing down kind, fun, generous CEO. And I wrote that on a little sticky note and put it on my whiteboard next to my, desk or whatever. And I'm definitely not always kind, fun, and generous. Probably sometimes I'm annoying and stingy and, complaining or whatever, but
nobody's perfect.
Nobody's perfect, but I'm a little less terrible than I used to be. And sometimes when I have tough decisions to make, I sort of find myself glancing at those 3 words, kind, fun, generous CEO. Okay, if that's how I want to be, could I use that to make my decision here a little easier? So that's my long answer that's supposed to be the short answer. To say it again, clarify how you want to be remembered as a boss and let that guide your actions from there.
So, out of curiosity, how long did that sticky note reflection take?
Oh, I mean, 5 minutes, but it would, gosh, the reflection need not take more than a minute here. Like,
Yes.
yes,
And right, it's the simplicity, and it's the what was it? The consistently inconsistent,
right.
right? How do you keep that focus and keep moving and chipping away and staying centered?
We need cues to bring us back to what matters most because there's so much potential distraction. How do we make sure that we're paying attention to what matters most and helping others pay attention to what matters most? You know, that how do we not get off course? And the project perspective of that is, yep, I revisit my, Gantt chart every week or whatever. But like, uh, okay, do you revisit your emotional impact vision every week?
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, that's a term I just made up. I don't know if that's a thing.
Thank you, Joel, for joining me today. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. If you'd like to connect with Joel and get your copy of 6.5 Habits of Highly Defective Bosses, visit joelhilchey.com/bosses. There you can take a self assessment because everybody loves to know how they measure up against an arbitrary standard. If you've walked away with something today, please like and subscribe, and then share this episode with colleagues. And feel free to share your biggest takeaway in the comments. We'll see you next time.